Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. The Get Real Show, we are here with Ashley, who is going to be speaking on her journey in recovery, addiction, eating disorders, running, just about everything, really. She's also a volunteer with the Phoenix, which we love. So would love to jump right into it and hear a little bit about your background, your story, and how you really got to the point where you realized that you wanted to become sober or had to become sober, either or.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a had to become sober. I did not want to become sober.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I spend a lot of time like this even talking about it because, you know, I want to show people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that a lot of the times, like, to get to that light, you have to put in a lot of work. And like, you're going to fail a lot of times at it too. It took me 6.5 years of attempting to get sober to get to 14 months, which is where I'm at now. But like, the work is worth it. And like, once it kind of like clicks, you know, everybody says they have their God moment or aha moment. That is like completely worth it. Because we were talking before this, and like I was saying, I have an enthusiasm for living now that like I didn't know that I like lost a long time ago, you know. Like way before like the necessity to get sober was like very real. The enthusiasm had been gone, and like there was a lot of things that are the reasons for that, you know. I've a chef in New York City. I've done 10 openings, 9 in New York and 1 in Las Vegas, and openings are long. I did the math once. It was like 6 years at 6-day work weeks, 90 plus hours. And I definitely think once I started to get into the fine dining side and doing openings is where it kind of all went, because like I would be at the restaurant from 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. I would come home, I would drink a bottle or 2 of wine, I'd go to sleep, I'd wake up, I'd do it again. You're one day off, you'd sleep till 4 p.m. to make up for it all. Yeah, so that's why I like to talk about the good parts. But yeah, no, I didn't want to get sober. Alcohol was like my best friend. It was my only friend by the time I really needed to get sober. And I was having serious health issues too. Like, pancreatitis, like liver starting to go, you know, like basically the doctors, I did a 6-day stint in the hospital because of pancreatitis where they weren't sure if it was like chronic or not. And like once you hit that stage with pancreatitis, there's like no going back. Your pancreas is just done. You like take years off your life and like that's it. Wow. Yeah. And where was the ramble going with that? Oh, and after the 6-day stint at the hospital, they were like, you drink again, you die. And I was like, yeah, I totally get it. And like lasted a month before I was like right back at it, which was like at least a bottle of vodka a day just to get through the day. So I had to get sober, and that something clicked a little bit, went to rehab, and it didn't stick the first time. I made it 105 days. And I really thought I was going to be sober for the rest of my life in those first 105 days, but I relapsed really hard. And I went to another rehab, and at that one was where I kind of like realized, like, if I put in the effort, this could work. And I met some really good people with a good foundation, and like was willing to take suggestions, and like was really willing this time. And so like, without getting into the horror stories and the nitty gritty of it, like that's really the drive and like where I stand now. But like the first 105 days were funny. I look back at it now and I'm like, I smoked weed the entire time. I was like sleeping with a married man, which like honesty is a key part in my recovery now. What else was I doing? I was like chugging NA beverages like my life depended upon it. And like for some people that works. For me, it's like it doesn't. Like I cut out even kombucha this time. Like when I know for a fact there's no alcohol in it. I don't drink mocktails this time because anything that just gives me like even like holding a wine glass, like the tactile feel, like anything that can just be weird for me. I just don't do.
Yeah.
I was going to bars after work every single night. And that's something I've been spending a lot of time on trying to figure out what I can do after work now this time. Because it gets lonely, you know,
Yeah.
like I work from like 1 p.m. till like midnight. At the current moment, you get out, you still have energy. Like I miss going to the bar and like decompressing with my bartender.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, what do I do now? And like right now I just run a lot in the morning. So I'm exhausted when I get home and after standing on my feet for 10 hours. So that helps, but it's like, that's not a real solution to like, how do I like find a way to decompress at the end of the night? That isn't, that is socializing, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I relate it to so many different things you just said. I'm
I feel like
bouncing back and forth.
Sorry.
No, that as you were going, I was like, yes, get that. Because I was the same way where I really had to get sober. Like it felt like there was no other option for me, but never ever did I want to. So it's crazy to think that we were both in a position where it wasn't an option we necessarily wanted but need it. And then today, obviously, are both doing much, much better. And then even with the relapse, like I didn't get sober the first time. I got sober the second time. I went at it and definitely can see where I messed up in the first time. I mean, I never even was saying it was a permanent solution. I was saying, oh, I'm just taking a break. But even the way I was living, I was not making choices that you would if you were trying to actually have a successful sobriety at all. But I very much relate to being in the restaurant scene in a much different position. I was actually my first year being sober. Yeah, just about in the first year, I was a bottle girl, and yeah. So that was very interesting because I would go into work. If you had the early shift, it was 5, or you could be at 10, you would go in, and then it would close at 2. By the time you were done, it was 3. And then same thing, everyone would sit in the back and like drink and smoke and do all of that. And I was okay being around it, but for a while it just weighs on you where it's like, what am I doing? Because we would do that. And the same thing, even though it's 3 a.m, because you just worked a crazy work shift, you have all this energy.
Yeah. And like nobody would come home from an office job and just like sit down and like instantaneously fall asleep. So the expectation that because you work nights, you would do that is just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, we need like normal lives as well. It's just the time frames
and social interaction.
Yeah.
And then we would end up going somewhere else after. I would get home at like 7 in the morning sometimes, and I was sober. And yeah, that just totally weighed on me. But then I ended up years in sobriety. For a really long time I was in the restaurant industry waitressing, and I really liked it, but there is a lot of alcohol and drugs and all of that in the entire restaurant industry, from hostesses to waiters and waitresses to bartenders to chefs to everyone.
Yeah,
like
it's a prolific issue, and it's also just a very common thing that like even if you have a restaurant, like let's say that's a dry restaurant, or you know that like your manager is telling you like you're not allowed to drink on shift, like it's not like a dive bar, you're not doing shots with the guests, or like, you know, cooks are never supposed to drink on the job really, because you're not interfacing with a guest, so you would have that opportunity. But even in restaurants like that, if you catch somebody, you're still like, oh, like it's the restaurant industry, like I'll look the other way. So it's like it's very normal. I'd say like people have asked about staying in restaurants, and like I was still in my first 90 days when I took the job that I'm doing, and like it was a tough thing to do, but like the thing that I had going for me that's a unique thing is that like I am the executive chef for the entire building. I'm like basically the highest ranked person in the building at all times, so like I can really like drive and set the culture and tone to make that like a really unacceptable thing. Like people have been caught drinking on the job, which I like feel really bad about because I drank on the job all the time. It was a survival tactic. I mean, for my last 5 years drinking, I was only maintenance drinking. I was not keeping alcohol in my apartment whatsoever, because if anything was in there, it would get drunk. If like somebody gifted me a bottle of something for like, chef, like, thank you for such a wonderful meal, you know, cheers to the kitchen, here's a bottle of bourbon, I would like almost start crying, because like I knew I would take it home. Like the second I saw it, it was in my hands. I knew I'd take it home. I knew I'd drink the whole thing, on top of how much vodka I had been drinking that day just to stay afloat.
Yeah.
You know, it was like I would have gone through like withdrawals, DTs, audio and visual hallucinations. Like the only thing I haven't had is a seizure, if I'm very honest. And like I was just drinking for the last 5 years, from 29 to 34, just to not go into withdrawals, because like I wouldn't wish that. I hate some people, and I would not wish like withdrawals upon them to save my life. Like that's how like excruciatingly painful, and like pancreatitis is excruciatingly painful. Appendicitis, I've had that too. Like and like nothing like beats withdrawals for me personally. So like it was just 5 years of like just like I would pack nips in like my pockets, my whatever. I started the day with 3, and then every hour on the hour that I was awake and functioning, I was having at least one. And like some days that didn't work, so then I would like steal wine, steal these things, steal whatever that I could to like just stay at a functional level. So like I have had to fire people for drinking now, and I like feel really bad when I do, because of like all of my past sins. But like I've had somebody else let go of somebody I'm trying to think how much I should talk about this, but you can edit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
If it has been, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Like this part right here. No, but like when people are getting fired for drinking on the job, I prefer to be the one who is doing it, because I can also like get an assessment of like what's going on. Like, is this just like a young kid making like a stupid mistake, or is this somebody who's like screaming for help in the same manner that like I was screaming for help and not realizing it, and like wish that somebody had like been like, you are not okay, like you look sick, like go to a meeting, get help. Like it doesn't need to be another sober person to do it, but like I have that lens to be like, you could really be putting yourself in a dangerous position here. Like, do you want some resources or not? Yeah. But I get to set that tone. And so, like, we have a 0 tolerance policy. I used to cook with a lot of liquor. Like, I'm classically French trained, and I just removed all of that from, like, my repertoire. So I don't cook with any booze anymore. So I've been, like, really able to like create a safe space for myself, whereas if you were a line cook, a waiter, a whatnot, like you don't get to set those rules. So like I've been lucky in that sense, and that's why I've been able to go back at it.
But you're honestly probably helping other people within the restaurant business that maybe want to be in a space like that, because it is so few and far between that a restaurant would have a culture like that. So now if you have that culture, you can attract more people that may be struggling but not want to leave the industry, because it is a great industry, and especially if you're talented within it and doing something that you love, like you shouldn't have to ever give up something you love in order to stay sober.
Exactly. And like this is something that I'm like incredibly passionate about, and I like love doing. I mean, I talked about how many hours I've worked in over how many years. Like you don't do that. I mean, I guess some people do it and they hate it, but like it's really hard to do that for that long. And like so I couldn't imagine not being able to do it. And like that is actually something that I'm hoping I want to work on in partnership with other groups, even like the Phoenix. And there's like a group called Ben's Friends that's kind of like AA for restaurant people. And like, I don't know, I want to keep pushing forward this mentality that like there is safe space, there is harm reduction spaces in the industry. And like that's really important to me, particularly in like my next venture that I would take, which hopefully will be my own finally, like my own restaurant. A huge part of what I want it to be is like a safe space community center for people who are sober curious, struggling, just need to hit pause, find ways to, you know, reduce their drinking, like whatever it is, you know, that it's there, because it's an industry that's plagued by it. We lose a lot of people to it. We lose a lot of people to suicide as well. And like all these things are just fueled by addiction problems, right? So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was waitressing, I loved it. And that was at a much, much lower level where like I didn't really need to keep doing it, but I just enjoyed it, let alone having it be your livelihood and your passion and something that you're incredibly talented at. So I think that would be amazing if you opened up your own restaurant and did that. And I think there's definitely a gap in the market for it, because now you hear so many people doing like non-alcoholic bars and this or that, and that's amazing too, but I've never heard of like a restaurant that was a safe space for any employee to come from the top to the bottom that wanted to be in an environment that you could be sober. So that is really, really neat.
And until then, I kind of wear my sobriety on my sleeve. I've had somebody at the current restaurant come up to me and be like, "Chef, I think I need a meeting." Like, and I took them to their first meeting. Which was like super cool. So like until I can create my own space for that, all I can do is like be me, which is like I talk a lot. And like I'll talk about personal details like until you are uncomfortable. But like if that gets one person to feel like they're like can be like, "Hey, am I struggling? I'm not alone." Like, great. So
yeah, no, I think that's amazing. So I'm on board. And then you've talked about too where with your eating disorder with cooking, I'm super curious about that because I've had like a weird up and down with cooking. Like I don't love to cook really, like I will here and there, but it's much easier for me to get like just a quick meal out or something like that. Like I will cook here and there. What I can't do is meal prep. I know meal prepping helps a lot of people. I don't really meal prep. Like there's like a lot of weird things around that for me. So I would love to hear like what your journey with that was.
Yeah, I mean, my like first, I say I have two really bad time periods in my life with my eating disorder, which like I used to, even just up till recently, like really like be defensive about talking about it with my family and I told you before we did this interview, I was like, I feel uncomfortable talking about eating disorders because like I look how I look, like everybody in their head has this like perception, and again I'm like mind reading onto people, has this perception that like to have an eating disorder you have to be super skinny and you know, and like that was like part of the issue too. When the first time it happened, I was 15, 16. I was a sophomore in high school is when it got bad. And, you know, like I've always just been like a little like 5'7", a little bigger boned. And so like I dropped a lot of weight for me. I was incredibly skinny. I was like a size 0 and whatnot, but like it just didn't show how it like looked on other people. So like I just didn't like, people would be like, you look great. You don't have a problem. Right. You know what I mean? Like you don't look emaciated. You look like incredible. This is also the 2000s where like Christina Aguilera, everybody is like as skinny as can be. And it's
Paris
like the thing.
Nicole Richie, Lindsay Lohan.
You know, like it's the thing to be. So I get like super weird talking about it. But I did always say, like, because I do podcasts for cooking too, and I always wanted to talk about my ED and how, like, kind of, I used to say cooking saved my life. No, I think getting sober saved my life, but like back at that time period, because it did really like force me to have a healthy relationship with food. I was like touching it every day. I was tasting it every day because it's part of your job description. You know, constantly around it, not scared of it. And I got into cooking at 21, and from like 21 to 28, which is like right around the time that my drinking blasted off, was like the first time in my life that I like held a consistent, healthy, functional, obtainable, doable weight. And a lot of that had to do with like stepping into a kitchen and like demystifying, you know, food. So that was huge. Yeah. I can't meal prep either, but I also just think that's because I cook all the time and I don't want to do that at home. But also like anything that's really like ritualistic with food, I just really try to stay really far away from. Yeah.
If I do, like, the least I'll do is just cook like a full thing of pasta and just have like plain pasta every day that week for lunch. That's really it. I'm just not, I can't meal prep. It's a weird thing, but I definitely, like, I always say like the difference between getting sober and recovering from an eating disorder is in sobriety, you're practicing abstinence.
Yes.
You can just say, okay, I'm not going to drink today. But with the eating disorder, you have to wake up every single day and still eat and face all of that head on. And there were so many ups and downs and learning curves and everything in my ED journey, I guess you would say. But yeah, like different times I wouldn't have certain foods in the house, or I would binge on it. Like just all these little things that I feel like you don't hear people talk about a lot. So then like it would make me feel super crazy like in recovery, because I kind of thought, okay, you recover, and then you're better type of thing. But with me, it was like, okay, like it's even worse mentally because you just came off of such a restrictive period in your life, and then you feel out of control. At least for me, I'm speaking, generalizing, but I felt out of control because it was like, why was this something I was so quote unquote good at restricting, and now I can't even have like peanut butter in my house. I can't have granola in my house. Like there were all these foods that I literally wouldn't even be able to have in my house because I would binge on it if it was in the house. And that's something like there's different parts of it that I feel like all of it was super shameful for me to admit, even though I had an eating disorder, period, even though it was very blatantly obvious at points. But then I felt extremely shameful the first time I ever admitted that I had bulimia. Then I felt extremely shameful the first time I ever admitted like the binge factor, because it's like binging to me is like the worst fear, the worst plausible thing to ever happen. And to admit that like this disease that I was so obsessed with abstaining from things that I not only could not abstain but would do in excess was my worst nightmare.
Yeah, for sure. And like I don't know if you find this true. I feel like I've been thinking about this a lot since our first conversation before I came onto the podcast. There's just like so much of it's like an ED is such a mind fuck. Like it's like that's all it is. It's like literally what it is. Like it's like not a desire to be skinny. It's like even though that's a huge part that can come along with it. It's like it's just this like mind fuck of a game that like you get like stuck in this like it's not based in reality understanding of how you are supposed to consume things. And it could be like restrict, excessive, regurgitate. My first round of bad eating disorder was anorexia. And then the second one was like a really strict anorexia where like I wasn't eating more than 400 calories a day. And I was also throwing up if I did binge. And the binges always happened when I was drinking because I was getting more than 400 calories a day. And this is where I look back and I'm like, you are such a fucking alcoholic because you are dealing with like counting out like what does this gum have, like putting 5 grams of calories on, but I wouldn't count the calories in alcohol because nobody could touch my alcohol. Like
I did the same exact thing.
Insane. Yeah. But like it's such a mind fuck because and then you get sober and you realize that like a huge part of being sober is like trying to figure out how to like unfuck your mind and like live soberly and like live like pleasantly like with yourself and others, but more so with yourself, right? Like how do you treat yourself well enough that like you can like calm all the like craziness in your head, right? And you start to understand that a little bit. At least I do, you know, like I have this value and self-worth. And then you start thinking about your body and your intake and like all this work that you've done in your like sober recovery. Just for me, like the logicalness of it, the self-worthness, the treat yourself right just goes out the goddamn window, you know? And so it's like, I'm like working a program for like my alcoholism and like I am totally not working a program for my ED. And like, I think like one of my favorite AA sayings is like, don't work the problem, work the program. And like, I don't know what that is for my ED, but since like, I'm very happy you asked me to do this because it really has been forcing me to think a lot. And I do think that there is like a program that I need to start to work. Because it's like getting sober versus white knuckling it. Nobody wants to live in this white knuckle world. And like, I've been living in it like way more than I realized. And like, gift of sobriety, you see everything clearly. And so like it's definitely something I like still have to work on. Like I didn't even realize that I still had like the phobia of using a big spoon Like I would only use little spoons when I eat because it would force you to eat slower. And so you'd most likely eat less. And I like over the last week realized that like I absolutely like refuse to use anything like above the little like coffee spoons that I have in my house. And I was like, you still really do this. Like this is really weird. Like eat your cereal with a regular size spoon, you psycho.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's so like, I don't know. It's just, it's hard, but restaurants definitely helped that a lot. And I think why it's come back with a little bit more of a fervor at the moment is because, one, I'm seeing clearer. I'm not just in a fight for survival like I have been for the last 5 years. Like, you know, so there's like time to think about it. But two, running, which has like become my like outlet for like at first to keep me sober, like my first 90 days, like I just did it because I like had so much energy and I was scared I was gonna pick up a drink, like not energy, anger. So I would run. But like now, since being consistent at it, I like absolutely love it, and now I'm into it, and I'm signed up for a marathon next year and a swim run and 2 half marathons, and I just put my name in for another half marathon, like, and it's a lot, right? Fueling is what's actually like brought a lot of it back on, because I can't get away with, I can't work out in the capacity that I want to, because I've also like strength trained and swim every week as well. I can't do that without fueling properly, but fueling properly feels like an aggressive amount of calories, and it's like, it's really hard at the moment. So like being sober and having clarity and seeing that I still have all these issues, and like also now being athletic and loving it and realizing to do that I have to like fuel in a certain capacity, and struggling with that has like really brought to a glaring light that like I work a program for one recovery and I don't do it for the other one, and in one world I'm doing better and in the other one I'm not doing as good as I thought. So how do we change this?
Again, just 100 things I'm like yes. The thing with the counting calories of like a gum, but then just allowing alcohol, unbelievable. That was me too. Like, and that's initially why, like, I obviously really like drinking for other reasons too, but the very first year of me drinking, I did not have an eating disorder. And there were some episodes, there were some really bad times, but then it got really bad. And it was like my escape from my eating disorder. And like the whole day it was like this stringent plan. And then once I started drinking, I was like, oh no, whatever. But somehow I was able to avoid drunk eating or anything for years. But then I did, and that like was a whole mess of its own. Then like my first ever binges were like blacked out binges type of things, and then it spiraled from there. But even about the running and like fueling yourself, that's definitely something that helps me today. Don't worry about it. Is the difference in, like, I've talked about how I've had the negative and positive relationships with running, and a main difference, I actually was talking about this with another guest earlier off camera, when I was negatively using running. At one point I went 3.5 years, did not take a single day off ever. I went out in blizzards. I remember one time there was a state of emergency in Philadelphia and you weren't allowed outside. And this should have been like a huge red flag. I was running laps around my dorm for an hour because I had to run 1 single hour or more every single day for 3.5 years. So I was running laps in my dorm room, like the dorm hallway, like in public, like people were seeing and just like, she's crazy, you know? But back then I wasn't doing, like, I did a race here and there, but it was just like, oh, whatever. Like, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about being strong or challenging myself to be better, a better person, or like do this adventure with my teammates and friends. It wasn't about that at all. And when I ran in high school and in middle school, even with teammates, like it was like this team thing, and it was so much fun, and I built the best relationships of my life. And then during like my college day, it was my freshman year of college, and then the end of my senior year, it was like a very lonely thing. Like it was like very isolating, and just doing it for like the core reason of like punishment, burning calories, like just like this obsession, like something like snapped in my brain. But now today, it's the opposite for me, where I'm like way more loose with like, oh, I'll do a couple days this week. I might not. I might have something else pop up, and it's not a big deal. Like before, like I would not, even if I had to run later in the day, like I was not functioning. Like that whole beginning half of the day, I wasn't functioning. Where now it's like, oh, I fit it in when I can. And then like, oh, like some crazy race you're doing. Yeah, I'll go do it. And it's like, now I'm actually realizing the fuel thing does help me, where before like it wasn't about fuel, because it wasn't about actually accomplishing anything other than giving into the ED. And now it's like, okay, I want to be really fast, or do this cool race, or actually perform. So I try to think about what is going to help me with that. But I definitely think too, like navigating an eating disorder recovery period is hard enough, but then when you're like throwing in athletics, it does make it even harder, because then like you don't really know. It's very unclear, like, what am I supposed to be eating? What am I not? Like those early days, I just remember like, am I overeating? Am I undereating? Like you just literally have no idea, because for so long you didn't know how to eat like a normal person, and everyone else is just eating like a normal person, and you just want to go back to quote unquote normal, but you're like, what the heck is normal?
Yeah. And still these like I like can paint a pretty picture about like how like it's all like easier now, but like I ran 10 miles, what was it, like 2 Sundays ago, and then I had to call up my mom to be like, I can eat this sandwich, right? And she's like, what are you talking? And I was like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like can I eat did I run enough? She was like, what are you talking about? And like, I'm the firmest believer, and you don't need to run for your food, but it doesn't mean that your brain always like goes back to it. Or like I was telling you, I had like tweaked my knee on Sunday running, and so I was like, I'm just gonna take off Monday, you know, like it's gonna be fine. And then I had to talk to like my running bestie to be like, I'm really scared about eating today. He's like, you also need to eat when you're resting, like please eat. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Like it's huge. Like so like it just stays hard sometimes, even though like you're like getting through it. I don't know.
That whole deserve, that was something that was so hard for me when I first started to take off or have off days. It was like, oh, I don't deserve to eat today, basically.
It was really it.
Which is crazy.
And like also too, like it's a control thing as well. Like when I get really stressed at work, which will happen more often than I would like, but like is just the nature of the business. Or if there is some personal stuff going on, like the easiest thing for me to like subconsciously control without even realizing it is my caloric intake. And like I feel like, and all of a sudden I'll like blink and it's been 24 hours and I haven't eaten, because it just so naturally can default to that position. Like I'm stressed, my eating goes, and I don't even realize it, you know. And I'll be employing tactics that I don't even realize. You feel a hunger pain, drink black coffee, ice water with lemon, you know, like chew gum, hit your vape, like all these things. It goes away. Great. I have another like 5 hours before I feel hungry again. It's just, you know, subconsciously too. So it's fun times.
No, definitely.
But again, like I feel like I have a more cohesive plan because I'm like lucid in my life. Like I'm aware of what's going on in my life now because I'm sober. So like, fine, this isn't perfect, but I can see it now. And because I'm sober, like I would have never met somebody like you or Grant or like all these other incredible people who are just now in my life. And like, I have this community through sobriety and through running and now through swimming a little bit too. Like, and that helps. Like, I would have never picked up the phone in the past to be like, hey, I'm having a rest day and I'm scared about eating. You know, now I do. And so like, you know, like gifts of sobriety keep on working if you like, you know,
Yeah.
if you use them. So that's been really helpful.
I think it's huge to have a community because it is definitely fake it till you make it. And just like doing, like, even when you're doubting yourself, to text your friend or mom or whoever. Like for me, it was always like in recovery, like leaning on my mom or one of my friends that knows about what's going on and saying like, oh, I really don't I feel like I overate. I feel like I ate too much. And sometimes you just need to hear another person's voice like, no, you didn't.
Yes.
You just had a nice dinner with your friends. You're okay. It's going to be okay. And sometimes you just need to hear that. Like, you can't, I mean, I'm sure some people do it by yourself. I don't know why you would want to do it by yourself. Like, it's definitely a lot easier. I'm sure a higher success rate of actually doing well if you do have the community to be able to, because you're not looking for that much. Like, sometimes you literally just need a text back that's like, no, you didn't. You're fine. Like, it wasn't that much.
Tough love. Like my mom said, stop being silly. Like, what are you talking about here?
Yeah. Like
you could eat probably, I heard verbatim, she's like, you could eat 2 of those and be fine.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. And that just makes you feel better. And it's just like something so little just helps you so much. But I do feel like I wish there was, like, I'm unaware of one. I wish there was an easier solution because I feel like I'm in a good place now, but I'm also almost just about like 5 years out from starting recovery. So, okay, I've been like in a good place for maybe like a year. So there has to be a better solution because I remember with alcohol feeling better so much quicker.
Yeah.
Where this is like trial and error. And it's not like I was doing horrifically in recovery, but it's just like these things you have to like go through and get through. And then you realize like, oh, I shouldn't be stress eating. Oh, I shouldn't have this in my house. Okay, now I can. Now I can't do this now. And finding whatever ends up working for you. I've talked about a lot. Now I intuitively eat, and that's the only thing that helps me. And the only thing I plan to ever do because I've just never found another method to help.
Well, it also, like, the thing with like, you're talking about, like, with alcoholism, like, and it felt better right away. Like, the thing with an ED is that it's, like, it's very wearing because, like, you can't ever escape yourself, right? So, like, you're always, like, you can't escape, like, the thing that is causing the problem, right? Where with, like, alcohol, it's very clear. You can take the alcohol out of your apartment. You can learn to walk a different way that doesn't pass your liquor store. You can do all these things. But, like, you can't ever take away your body. And so, like, when you're, like, really in it, you're still gonna, like, walk by your bathroom mirror. You're still going to lay down on the couch and see your leg that could like throw your head through a loop because there's a fat roll. Like there's, you know what I like? Yeah. So it gets very draining, like to find that safe space. And like, I like wish I could meditate or like get more in tuned with like my like non-physical self. Something I'm definitely would be willing to work on. But like it's wearing, you know, like you can remove the substance, you can't remove you from you. And when you're struggling from an eating disorder, like that is really what you're dealing with, at least in my opinion. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the exact same thing as alcohol, drugs, any other substance that you're using to deal with root issues and root problems. Like when I first was getting my eating disorder, I remember somebody approached me and said that like they thought maybe I was struggling. They kind of like, they didn't come at me. They were just speaking generally about eating disorders and how sometimes runners can get them. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And they were like talking about like sometimes if you like feel like you can't control anything else in your life, that you use it to control. And I was like, wow, that's not me, you know? No. And I truly thought like, okay, I think I have one of these, but I'm not using it to like control things. You know, you just don't see clearly. Now I realize even like I think it really helped me to realize the core of like why I was doing things. Like even with the bulimia, like to me it felt like a release of like pain and guilt and this and that. And obviously you would get that 5 seconds later, but like where is that stemming from? And maybe that will help you moving forward so that you never have to feel like that again. So I think it's the same thing with
any addiction that you have to get to the root of the problem, because it's not actually that cupcake. Like, it's not about the cupcake. It's not even about the leg roll or the whatever that you're looking in the mirror. It's something else that is the root cause that you have to trace back, I think, to really
for sure
figure it out.
Yeah.
Which is hard. The hard part of any addiction, really. Do you feel like being in the restaurant industry today, like, do you feel like it still helps you hold yourself accountable, like, schedule wise? Like, how do you go about on such a weird schedule being able to eat and just live naturally with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is less helpful than it used to be, because you can always find a way to, like, create unhealthy patterns in any environment. So, like, what started out as, like, being around food all the time was helpful. Like, I just, like, I can naturally build in systems that just, like, allow me to, like, do what I normally like to do, which is, like, I, like, work out in the morning, don't eat anything. It's probably around, like, 5 p.m. until I start tasting food, and then, like, come home, and that's when I actually get a meal, and, like, that's it. So, like, that's the pattern. Recently, I've been finding myself doing for, like, the majority, like, for, like, my first year of sobriety, and, like, that's what I'm, like, specifically trying to break at the moment, because it's, like, it's not enough, and, like, it's just not fun, and a lot of the times I am way hungrier than I'm admitting to being. So no, I think like anybody who doesn't address what you're talking about and what I've mentioned before, the, like, root cause of the problems and why it's still persisting, you know, per se white knuckling it, the problems will creep back in. So yeah, it's scheduling for sure. Like, and I can always use, like, restaurants are always busy. Like, they're always busy.
Oh yeah.
Like, somebody calls out sick. Like, this happened yesterday. I wasn't supposed to go in until 1, and I ended up being in at 10 a.m. because somebody called out sick, and I ended up working a 14-hour day instead of, like, my normal 10. And, like, it was really busy because of these call outs. Like, we didn't have, like, our normal extra help to get stuff done. So not only was I working a station for brunch, but I was also doing a lot of prep work, and then a lot of my admin work that still has to get done to get ready for dinner service. And by the time all was said and done, and I didn't even realize it to this morning, because I ran 10 miles this morning with a girlfriend, and I was like, and I, like, totally hit my caloric intake yesterday, and I was so proud. She's like, tell me what you ate. And I was going through, I was like, well, I ate, like, this in the morning, and then for lunch, I swear I didn't eat lunch. And I was like, but for dinner I had chili. And, like, you can come up with, like, that excuse. And sometimes it's just real. Like, I didn't feel like I had time. Like, I didn't sit yesterday once, let alone, like, find time to eat. So.
Yeah, it's very chaotic for sure, I feel like. Do you feel like you function well in chaos?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I think a big part of why I liked drinking was I liked chaos. I think, like, I have this, like, real, like, I also like chaos in, like, my, like, romantic relationships, like, and, like, all of these things are stuff that I'm trying to, like, fix and work on and, like, steer away from. Like, so do I think I thrive in chaos? Yes. And, like, do I think I need to be less proud of that? Yes. And, like, do I think it's, like, a great skill to have to be able to, like, watch a bunch of moving pieces, like, almost fall apart and, like, be able to put them back together? Yeah. And that's my job. But, like, I don't need to be excited about that. Like, how do we make sure that it's, like, all working and functioning before it falls apart, you know, is more my job, not the, like, I can swoop in the last minute and, like, save everything and fix it. And that's definitely what I focus on more. But, like, why I open so many restaurants is also, like, I, like, love chaos. Opening a restaurant is pure chaos. Like, people hear that I've done 10 and they're like, what is wrong with you? Or, like, they're just like, you're crazy, you love openings. And I do, and I don't think I'm ever gonna stop that, but, like, it's definitely the chaos of it is less appealing to me than it used to be. And also I liked the chaos of openings a lot too, and I like jumping from opening to opening because nobody could catch on to how bad my drinking was. Let's be honest. Right? Like, I would stay at a job and it would be anywhere from a year to a year and a half, maybe 2 if I really loved the company and people. There was one place that got me for 4, but they were smart and like had me open 3 restaurants for them because they knew I loved to. But like in all the moving pieces of an opening and also like not even knowing me for a year, you're just like, oh, she had, last night's service was really tough. She just smells like alcohol because she went out like everybody else does. Like you can slip through the cracks. Then after a year, people start to see it's a problem. So like I never did like geographicals in the sense of like moving different states, but that's why I moved to Vegas once to get away from my family telling me that I should stop drinking. But I changed jobs all the time because like subconsciously I realize now I didn't like I would get fired if people found out how bad my drinking was.
Yeah.
So like got the restaurant open, do it successfully, get accolades, get press, put it on my resume, like all this stuff, and then like find a problem that they did, which was always a real problem, use it as a justifiable reason to quit, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah
Very
interesting. What about when you get accolades and good press and all of that, are you ever satisfied or happy with that, or are you always thinking about like how to get the next?
I would say in the past it was always about how to get to the next, but like I've really, and like all I really cared about was accolades too. Like I've like been through like I want to say it's 5 New York Times review processes, not as the chef, but as the chef de cuisine for somebody else, as a line cook, as an executive sous, like in those positions. I've like cooked for Pete Wells 3 times 5 times, so 15 times. Like I did that math right? Yeah. Math is not my forte. I cook things. I've done that. I've been in like New York Magazine, and like I've gotten a whole piece on Bon Appetit written about me, and like it was like all I really liked and all I really wanted and all I really cared about. But like again, getting sober like puts into perspective like what is actually worth prioritizing and what is not. And like I refuse to, like, since I've gotten sober, I refuse to give more than 50% of myself to my job, which it used to be 98% of myself to my job. And that doesn't mean when I'm there, I don't give 100%, but like there's a divide now. And I'm like working very hard on like, I'm Ashley and I happen to be a chef. I'm not Chef Ashley, right? Because as much as I love it, and the accolades are great, I don't really chase after them. I mean, I haven't really had an opportunity either. I've only been cooking and like back into it without being in rehab and not like, and being sober for 14 months now, right? Yeah. But like, it's less like of the priority. It used to almost be embarrassing to me if like I opened a restaurant and then like it didn't get like Esquire Best New, Restaurant of the Year, which like I've done that before. And now I'm like, I'm very proud of what I do. And like, I live a nice life and I live a sober life. And did you just hear I ran 10 miles this morning? Like, that's more what I care about. I'm like, because also the people I surround myself with are like really remarkable athletes, like you being one of them. And like, I only started running again this year. And like, just these things are like what I find cool now. Not like, oh, some stranger knows me because I cook food and have like a really hard reservation to get in New York. Like I worked for Mario Carbone for forever. Like I worked at restaurants that were hard to get into, you know, and I had a lot of acquaintances because of that. Yeah. I have a lot of friends now that like could care less if I'm a chef or not. Yeah. And like care more about the fact if I'm happy. You know, and like that matters way more to me than anything else. Yeah. So
that was absolutely incredibly put. I feel like that is just amazing to actually have people in your life that care about you and what you're doing and not just what you bring to the table. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like everyone, that's how I feel like when we meet for runs and have our run clubs and whatever, like everyone has their own crazy lives, but like when we're there, like it's just like you're just Ashley and I'm just Maddie, and it doesn't matter what the heck we did that day. Yeah, that we're all just there to connect and have this community that we're all bound by the great fact that we're sober, and then there's other people that come that aren't, that are just supporters and great people and all of that. I think is incredible. And you always see like clips of movie stars. I mean, there was Matthew Perry and so many others that had these insanely impressive careers in the limelight, and they say at the end of the day their biggest accomplishment that they're most proud of is their sobriety. And I feel like that is really the basis of everything else in life, and everything else just comes. And the external validation like is great. Like I love getting awards and this and that, but like what is that actually doing for you? Because I was wondering, because I feel like the second I get any type of external accolade, whether from a job or this or that I'm super happy in that moment, and then like 5 seconds later I'm like, okay, on to the next. But sobriety is like an everlasting proudness, and the only thing that really sticks that I'm proud that I have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you gave me a little bit of like chills right there. And it's like, no, seriously, because I think about it all the time, you know, and it's like how a little self-talk that I give myself about like my recovery is that like every day I get to like win the fight, right?
Yeah.
So like for somebody who's very like win oriented, like, I mean, I like captained and played for 3 varsity sports in high school. I captained my college tennis team. I like did very well in my career. I like am back into athletics and already like 1 year into it, like want to be like as good as I can be, you know, like winning is a thing. And so like that is really cool that like every day, like the toughest battle that I've ever had to face, like I get to win that battle again each day. And like that makes me feel proud about myself. Nobody else has to know, but like I get to know like I won this.
Yeah.
And it's that way too when like I'm feeling, I mean, I guess I got to figure out a way to channel that into like my ED feelings and like champion that.
100%.
Really, because like that would be cool and that would be satisfying, and that could also help out a lot. I just had like an epiphany moment. But like it also helps with like I don't like to say I'm a depressive person because I'm not. I used to think I was, but I just had a depressant in my system. I used to really think I was a depressed person. I'm a highly anxious person, but I take medicine for that now, and it helps a lot. But I have PMDD, which is something that I feel like a lot of, like, I didn't even know it existed until, like, a year ago. And I always wondered why on my period, like, when I was just drinking, the week before I'd get my period, I could tell instantaneously in my body that it was happening, and then I would try not to drink, but I couldn't because it would put me into withdrawals. But I could like go the longest amount of time. Instead of like an hour, I could make it like 4, because the less amount of alcohol I had in me, the less I thought I was going to like kill myself. And then I got sober, and I was still having all these like issues and like all these like suicidal ideations, like specifically in I forget what it's called, like your luteal phase, like the week that happens before your period starts. And finally, like on the advice of like people that I trusted from the rooms, like went and found some doctors, and like it just like all of a sudden made sense. And like I just like now I take medicine for it, and now I know like 1 week out from the 21st I'm always going to feel this way, and like I don't actually want to die, and like rain clouds aren't falling on my head and all these things. But like when I do have one of those episodes, like having that like inner, like I get to like that win helps, you know, like I can make it through this. So that like going back to what I said about like getting to win every day, definitely. Like what you're saying resonated with me, because it reminded me of that, and like that's cool. Like I'm proud of myself for that, you know. And being proud of myself is something that's new again. So
that's the hardest battle you're ever going to have to fight, is against yourself.
It's crazy,
and it's an uphill battle most of your life. And I just feel like it's something that is ever ongoing, because there's always going to be little things. Like once you face the big issues, then it's little, like I've said this before, like then okay, like how do I not people please, how do I not this, or how do I set boundaries, how do I practice balance, but how do I do exceptionally well and practice balance? Like, there's a million things to be able to keep going with. So you're never going to run out of a fight.
I was going to say, how do you not people please? Because if you could teach me on that one, I would absolutely love it.
I don't really have the answers for that.
I'll take that class. Thank you.
I feel like I have gotten better with it. But at the end of the day, I think like it's a bit natural, but like I talked about on with Sam, actually, we were both talking about it, that you just have to put yourself first sometimes, and then like you're not going to be able to help someone 100% if you're not 100% there for yourself. So that's my only advice for that, but I certainly could use some more as well. But yeah, I love every single thing you've said so far. I feel like has deeply resonated with me, even like with the, what is it called? PMDD. Like,
yeah.
Why don't more people know about that? You know?
Exactly. I feel like there's so much stuff with women's bodies that we like go through constantly. That we're just
not even taught.
That we're just like not taught, not educated about, that like money hasn't put into the scientific research to find out about it. I'm just like, that's cool.
Like, thanks. Never once do I remember having like in health class, I'm being like, oh, some women are going to have this and some aren't. Like, I've just never ever remember being educated on that whatsoever. And it's something that happens with women's bodies.
For sure. And like to find a doctor to actually take me seriously instead of just being like, oh, it's just PMS. I'm like, this is not PMS. I know what PMS feels like. Like, this is not it. Like, everything can be perfect in the world, and like consistently on this day in my cycle, it's like this like rain cloud just gets dropped right on top of my head, and like everything's still shining except for the like circle around me, and it's going, and then it just lifts and everything's back to normal. And you know, like, just to get a doctor to understand that and be like, oh, this is really like this is this, and like it wasn't like just like, oh, like I like hate this, I want to die. Like, no, like very specific like thoughts of like, I want to end my life. Like, how could we do this? Like, it is a weird feeling, and I'm so grateful for the medicine I'm on, which is something I would have like, I fought tooth and nail, like, for when like in my childhood when I had some issues, and then in my adulthood too, you know, to take anything like an SSRI because like it'll change my personality, and like bitch, you'll smoke crack cocaine if somebody offers it to you, which I like, what are you talking about? But like, to have somebody listen, and then like now, like, because they listen to me, I'm listening to them, and like testing and finding out what medicine does work for me. And I know some people like medicine doesn't work, and like there's other ways to go about it. This is not me promoting like jump on stuff, because like I think you need to be really specific about what you go on, particularly like with like Xanax can mess you up, you know what I mean? Like, us addicts need to be very, very particular. But yeah, like, it's a game changer. Like, the thoughts still linger, but they're not like, let's conceive of a plan. They're like, happen, and then I'm like, oh, this is happening. This always happens. They don't feel as heavy. I can go for a run. I can call a friend. I can, you know, take a bath. I can read a book. I can like do breath work. I can do all these things to get through it, instead of just feeling like, nope, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, I think it's huge too to have the mindset where there's a different solution for everybody, and everybody's solution can be right simultaneously. I feel like a lot of people that are not on medicine are like, medicine's horrible, and people that are on medicine are like, you need to be on medicine. Like, everyone just do your own thing. Exactly. You know?
I had a really lovely conversation about it on the Phoenix Friday run with a girl, and you know, I was talking about how it works for me, and she was talking about how it like does, like, she's scared to try it and probably doesn't work for her, and like neither of us were trying to force a point upon the other. We were both listening to like the real pros and cons for why it works and doesn't work for us, and like I wish people took that mentality with more things, even with getting sober too.
Yeah.
You know, like I like fought getting sober for so long too, because the only option that was presented to me was AA. And AA, particularly depending upon what groups you land in, I'm a big AA person now. I like genuinely love it. But depending upon what groups you fall in, it can feel very like shoved down your throat, like have to do it this way. No, you're wrong if you think, you know, and like there's just many different ways to get sober. There's many different ways to like live your life, and as long as you're not doing harm to yourself and others, you know, like let's all coexist with those different ways.
Yeah no, that can be applied to literally everything. What else do you feel like you do? Like you said, breath work. That's huge for me. I always try to, when I'm super stressed out, I'll do like the 2 short in really fast and the long one out. Is there any other tips or tricks you have to?
Getting cold is a big one for me. And my therapist also talked about it. But like I have the benefit of having a walk-in freezer at work. So I can like when I really need to shock the nervous system. But like I'm like kind of looking into getting a cold plunge for like my balcony.
This is giving cold plunge.
But I really like getting like cold shower. Cold walk-in freezer. Cold.
If you have one,
but
get in there.
Getting in there like super duper helps. Particularly with doing breath work. Like if I'm very stressed at work, I will walk into the freezer and do like 4 long in and 4 long out and just repeat it until I'm calm. And like also she explained the scientific reasoning to me. I have no idea why the cold helps, but to me it does.
Yeah, for sure. I want to try a cold plunge. Now I know that's huge obviously on other podcasts and everyone's talking about the cold plunge. So now I'm super curious.
I mean, for a runner, I hear it's good too.
Yeah. I mean, I used to like when you're injured, you know, shin splints, get your shins in there, but never like a real cold plunge, you know. But
I think it sounds fun.
Yeah, maybe we have to have that at a Phoenix run.
That would be great.
But then also you do volunteer work with the Phoenix and are a big part of the Phoenix. Can you tell me about how that all started?
I mean, I think being of service is like, I'm really happy that you brought this up because it's something that I don't feel like I talk about enough when I talk about recovery, but like being of service has been like one of the like quickest, best ways, like quickest in the sense of like when I'm really struggling and want to pick up a drink of like getting me right out of that mood, and like best ways of like keeping the longevity of sobriety going. So like I go back to my old rehab once a month and like talk to the current inpatients there as well. They kind of just started this like, for lack of a better word, like big brother, big sister program. And like one day I got a phone call from them. They're like, I'd love you to meet this girl. She has a lot of like history that's very similar to yours. They're like, when can you come see her? I was like, I can drop everything and come now. Like, and I met her and like now we're like still talking, you know, and like I'm there to help her once she has the ability to like, if she wants to go to meetings with me. If she wants to go to Phoenix events, go to Phoenix events. If she, you know, anything that I do for my like recovery, like I'm more than welcome to bring her. But then also like doing volunteer work with the Phoenix. I have 3 pillars to my sobriety that keep me going. One is AA, but like one is not more important than the other. One is AA. One is the Phoenix. And then one is Ascendant, which is my last rehab. And I go there also once a week for group therapy because they have free alumni-based group therapy once a week as well, which is really incredible. And the Phoenix was kind of out of all of them. Like Ascendant did the most work really because like that's where I had the epiphany moment, and that's where I got diagnosed with PMDD, and that's where I found like the counselor who I say saved my life. I still email him every 106 days because when I went to Ascendant, I'd relapsed at 105, so 106 was where like the whole thing started again, and he was the one who convinced me. He was like, you didn't lose it all, you just like, you still made it to 105 days. You just took 5 days off. You still have those 105 days. And like, now you're going to go right back. Like, this isn't as much of a like utter failure as you think. Like, you still have that underneath your belt. But he was also the first person that I was willing to take suggestions from, which I think, like, you have to be able to listen to other people's suggestions. That's, like, the best advice I have for, like, getting sober in the beginning. Suggestions are not mandates. You don't have to do everybody's suggestions, but being willing to listen to them is a huge thing. So they've done the most, but, like, the most impact on my life has hands down been the Phoenix. And I, like, have made the most incredible group of friends from it. It has gotten me physically active, but it's also, like, it's not even just the friends, it's the sense of community that comes with it. And, like, I didn't realize, like, how much it impacted my sobriety until I was getting ready to celebrate my 1 year. And, like, this phrase came out of my mouth when I was qualifying at an AA meeting. And I say yes to service. If somebody asks, I do. Open this meeting, qualify, whatever. Again, like, service is my grounding point in staying sober. But I was putting it all together and I was like, I didn't realize, but I didn't get serious about my sobriety until I got serious about my community. And I think I worded it even better than that. My sobriety didn't get serious until I got serious about my community. And it, like, having a network of people that can understand you in any situation you're in while trying to stay sober has been the biggest game changer. And then out of that network, I have managed to find friends that are unlike any I've really had in my life. And I don't mean that to discredit my friends that I've known my entire life, because I love them and they are absolutely incredible and unlike anything else. But there is something about people that are sober that you can just, like, really, like, resonate with when you yourself are sober or trying to get sober. And it's been a game changer. And it's like, I don't know, be there for that community as that community is there for me is something that's very new to me, because I wasn't able to be there for myself, so I sure as hell wasn't there for anybody else for the longest time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot imagine life now if I hadn't had that random incident of Grant coming into my old rehab with the Phoenix. Met him, didn't have the courage to show up to a running event, so it took me, like, 4 months, and, like, me trying to, like, run a mile on my own and then 2 miles on my own before I felt comfortable to even go to this thing. And, like, that one random moment of, like, this dude showing up at the time that I was at this rehab, you know, and just, like, I can't imagine my life without it.
Yeah.
It's been so, it's like the enthusiasm that I was talking about that I said I lost, like, it's back, and it's back because of that, for sure.
I feel like that's just a testimony to everything happens for a reason.
So much so.
And I feel like in sobriety, you realize more, like, it's a very spiritual feeling when you realize, like, you were meant to hear someone's story at a certain time. You were meant to be introduced to people at a certain time, or someone might even just pass through your life for a very short period of time that you need it at that exact point. And it might not be the reason that we see at the time, like, we might not be able to see why, but we're learning lessons from everyone and everything that goes through our life. I think that's so amazing, because the first time I was introduced to the Phoenix, it was the same thing where I just feel like I had to hear that then and there. And once I got involved with the people there, like, it's just the most unbelievable people.
Really, truly is. And, like, I love what they say, and I think I tried to allude to it before, like, there's no right way to recover. Like, if you're doing it, we're proud of you. And, like, that's kind of what they stand for as well. And, like, I really needed that as I figured out what role AA would play in my life as well. And so, like, that's also why it was super important. And, like, getting my body back. It was like, I cannot imagine if I hadn't met the Phoenix, like, I just can't imagine what my life would look like right now. Like, I physically can, and it's all because of, like, one random day that, like, somebody came into this rehab. But, like, all these things that I hold dear and important now, from friendships and community, and to, like, showing up and being of service, and to, like, getting my body back, and, like, being physically strong to be mentally strong, has all come from, like, participating in this organization.
And that just goes to show you why it's important to share your story and to be vocal, because the Phoenix's message touched you at the perfect time, and you might be touching someone else at the perfect time. And that's why we do this, to hopefully help that one person at the exact time they need to hear it. And if that's it, then we did our job.
Exactly.
But what would you tell someone that was trying to get sober, that's tried before, feel like it's not for them, they didn't succeed, they're feeling hopeless? Ugh. What would you tell them?
I don't know. I honestly don't. I mean, I feel like each case is like different, but I think the common thing that comes through, because I have had this conversation with people now, is like, the work is worth it. Like, the amount of like boredom and pain you will have to go through to get sober. And I really don't like think it's a fun process. I don't think anybody who's gone through it is like, woo, that was like the most enjoyable thing I've ever done. Like particularly in the first 90 days, but like it is worth it. Mm-hmm. Like it is worth it. Like you're probably going to fail along the way. So if you're coming out of a failure, that is 100% fine. But like it's worth it. That's like really it. Like the work, the boredom, the pain, the loneliness, the everything that does come with getting sober, all of it will be eliminated and then some if you like keep fighting. So keep fighting. It's not going to come passively. Keep fighting.
And when you do get to the other side, it quite literally feels like you're on a different side of life.
Yes.
So it is worth it, and it is worth the struggle. And thank you so much for coming on and getting real and giving back to the community in the Phoenix and everything you do just day to day, and helping people, creating safer spaces in restaurants and gifting people your amazing food. Really all the work you do day to day for yourself and everybody else.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcast will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.